to the Pro Coder Show, the place where you learn to become a savvy pro. And now for your host. He's built mission-critical systems and battled midnight failures. He's released software used by millions. And he's the biggest Doctor Strange fan you'll ever meet. Greg Turnquist.
All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Pro Coder Show. We've got a Power Pack session ready for you. Don't forget to stop at procoder.io/question and pose your question, and we may just be able to answer it today. And if not, we may catch it in a future episode. Now, for today's opening segment, what should you put into a Git commit message? Or if you're not using Git, maybe you're using a different version of form of version control. What kind of things do you need to put in those commit messages? And even more importantly, what should you never put in a Git commit message? Now, why are we even talking about Git? I mean, come on, this is version control. Isn't that kind of boring? The whole idea of being a pro coder and a software developer is to be writing the code, to crank out the stuff, to generate the activity. Isn't GitHub and whatnot kind of, I don't know, boring infrastructure stuff? Well, it can seem like that, but if you start thinking long range and don't think about what am I working on this week, but instead, what am I doing over the next 3 months, the next 6 months, a year, 2 years? A lot of times we spend as pro coders is we need to go back and look at what we built. We need to go back and read code. Sometimes it wasn't code written by us. It could have been written by somebody else. And at that point, you need to be able to look at a commit and say, well, here's the code, but what went on? What happened? What happened here so that I could understand it, so I can understand how to evolve it from this point forward. And so one of the first things you need to think about putting into a commit message is the first line needs to simply state what happened. Like, what does this change do? Okay, this change implemented new parser for Hibernate Query Language, or HQL. Just say implemented Antler-based parser for HQL. So one of the last features I implemented with Spring Data JPA this past year was to add that to it. So the first line, just a statement of what you did. That's all there is to it. Doesn't need to be very long. It needs to be concise and to the point. So when you're reading that 9 months from now, you get the point. Now, something else to then add to that is a little more detail or context in the subsequent paragraphs. You can go into the thing. Used Antler to implement HQL, EQL, JPQL query parser. This way we can make alterations to the queries. A little more elaboration if someone's going to delve in deeper. They may, if you're reading that or someone else is reading that, you may get the point of the subject line, or you may be like, well, I don't know. What are the immediate questions you can anticipate trying to remember? Is that what's a little more that I can add to that? So you want to put this additional context below the first line so you can add to that. And then something else that you really need to include is you want to, towards the bottom, ideally, is you put a link back to the ticket. So I said in the commit message, you want to put what happened, what you did, what was the point of it. What you don't need to put in there is all the back and forth, all of the war stories or the arguments. You don't need to put into the commit message, well, I argued with Jim Bob Joe and he had a different opinion, and I decided that his input was invalid, so we didn't do that. That doesn't really serve you a year from now when you're trying to read the commit message. Now, if you include a link back to the ticket where all this was developed, that's really handy. So somebody can read that. Well, you implemented a parser. What was there a little more detail to that, or why did we go with Antler? I heard about Lex and Yak. What's the deal on that? There should be a link down at the bottom of the commit message. Oh, okay, here's a link. I can go back to the issue and I can read the entire design conversation. Oh, okay, if I go back and look at the ticket, I can see that there was a discussion between the committer and 2 other people. Okay, that's a question I was just wondering. I see that they answered that. So you're giving them a trail. You're building the record. So, in a sense, you want to look at, I keep using GitHub, but this applies to whatever version control system you're using. But in GitHub, you can, the tickets or the issues is where you can track the whole evolution, the design, the involvement. Initially it started with this idea, and then we got some feedback. So we elaborated on the idea, the planning for it. And then finally you get a little further down into it and you can see, well, I did a first round of implementation, but I got this feedback from one particular developer that was actually pretty good. So I made alterations, and there's more changes. And then finally, I got approval, and so I merged it. So somebody can read the full story if they want it, and they can find that if they're starting from the code base. Somebody at any point can be reading a particular file in your system and say, I want to know more about this. Let me go look at the commit history and look at the record. Okay, here's the latest update to this happened 6 months ago. Let me look at some of these changes. Oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Now, it may be they're reading it like an adventure story, or they're like, there needs to be some changes here. There needs to be some alterations, but they can go look up the public record. This is where you need to think of people could come into this commit from a lot of different points of view, and you want to make it easy for them to get to the point and also give them the trail to continue down. Okay, well, I was thinking about making alterations to this. Now I can see where the changes happen. I can go read the issues and get a little bit of the backstory to understand how this works. I can have more context to inform me before I make more my changes to it. That's handy. Other people may spot, oh, there's a bug in the system. There's a bug on this line of code. When did this line of code come into being? Okay, I can use Git to look up the what's called the blame report, and it shows me who made this contribution. Okay, I can see this line. Here's this commit. This I can read the commit that introduced this. Oh, it looks like this was a solution for something else. I can then read the issue and understand, well, they were trying to solve this particular bug. Okay, I understand that, but it looks like they left out a corner case. So what I've stumbled upon is a corner case that was fixed in a previous commit. And now with all this context pulled in, coming in from a different angle, you can now understand, okay, I see what happened, and it gives you a hunch. It almost gives you a hunch of where to go to. Okay, now I can see where this altered, this changed, they added this, they solved for this, but they overlooked this. They made an assumption at this point. I know where to go fix the code. I know how to make the tweak to do that. And that's where it's really handy to have a properly written commit. And we need to think about the fact that I'm talking about one commit here, but the thing is this is an approach to take for all commits. So the whole idea is if we can have a consistent style, this is where the benefit of having a consistent style comes in. Instead of every commit having a totally different format, a different style, some of the commits have links, some don't. It now makes sense. Well, if I have a consistent style, if we make some amount of effort to polish commit messages before we actually commit them to the main branch, this gives us a consistent record to operate. It doesn't just become something I'm throwing over the fence just in case somebody wants to look at it in the future. No, I'm building a public record of this code. I'm building a consistent, almost like a database in a sense of what the code has done. And it's the connection point between here's the code itself, here's the tickets where we manage it, and here's the version history. This is where I'm making the version history not only serve me by having any point that I can go back in time to, but it's also giving me the record of its evolution in a contextual sense. And so when you see that, when you realize, hey, this is where commit messages can serve me instead of me serving the commit messages, then it becomes obvious that a commit message is nowhere to put your arguments or your disagreements or throw out your feelings of, I've patched this on a weekend because the boss man told me to, and I'm ticked off at it. There's no need to put all that stuff in there. Now, if you need to vent off steam, maybe you need to go spend time on Reddit and writing posts there. And that's just a joke. Don't go out to social media and vent about the boss man. Okay. It's just one thing we do as I recommend the pro coders is we need to be professional. This is a job. This is a career. This is what we're doing to earn to not just earn money and a livelihood, but to make an impact. And I don't think you're making an impact to anybody if you're going to go out and rant about working a particular ticket on social media. I don't think that's very effective. So that's why something to never put in your commit message is all these crazy war stories, if you will. It just doesn't make sense. Now, something that kind of a fringe thing that touches on all this stuff is how many commits do we need to be putting into the record? For example, I've worked on issues that, took several weeks to finish. I like to capture progress along the way in little bitty commits. And in those situations, my commit message is working, fix this, reproduce this, very short and brief, because I'm just trying to gain traction over the topics. I'm making little commits. But when it comes time to get the feedback from somebody else, to maybe be able to be ready to merge it to main, what I do is I like to take all those commits and squash them into one commit and rewrite the commit message. And that's a point to rebase against the main. I can squash all the commits, and then I can rebase against the latest. So I'm integrating the latest changes into my code, and I'm catching up to make sure I didn't break anything, because the main baseline could have evolved since then. That's why I'm a big fan of, maybe this is a 3-week task and it took me 15 commits to complete it. Somebody coming back after the fact to read my efforts doesn't need to go through 15 commit messages to get the point. That's where I need to spend some time, maybe a half hour, maybe a half a day, to sit there and let me squash everything down. Let me try to capture what's the big point at the top. What's some additional context that somebody's going to need to describe it, and then what's the tickets that I need to link to. And you can link to more than one ticket. Okay, this issue, here's the main issue that we resolved, but it happens to tackle 3 other issues, or it's relevant to these 3 other issues, because the patch for this other issue may need to pick up this change to do something. It's where it's keen to go share this kind of stuff. And this is where it's valuable to spend some amount of time thinking from a perspective of, this isn't just what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and throwing it into the version control system. I'm procuring a change log. I want somebody able to come back and read the record and, in a sense, be able to just sort of step back through time and see how the system evolved. There's some people that disagree and want to sit there and say, well, when you squash the commits and you rewrite it, that doesn't reflect what happened. Well, I don't think it's relevant 12 months from now that I worked on 2 commits. I took a lunch break. I worked on a 3rd commit. And then I had to go work on 2 other tasks for the next week. And then I came back to this one and added some more changes. Where's the value in that to future me 12 months from now? What's the benefit of that? I don't see a lot. To me, the benefit is taking, if this was one task, one effort, to squash it all together and kind of rewrite a more summary-based analysis of what I did, of what happened here. That's something that makes the commit log usable in the future. If I'm going to have it strewn across 15 commits, no one's going to read that, and no one's going to use this database, if you will. And I think it's a squandered opportunity that would have been perfect to take advantage of. This is why I always advocate for, have some decisive sense of what you're going to do. Have a plan for that. And that's why I think there's keen things that you need to put into your commit messages, and some things that never need to be in a commit message. Now, today's episode of the Pro Coder Show is brought to you by 12 Rules for Pro Coders. This is my latest book that I've written, and I've actually just hired the editor to go through it. So it's ridiculously cheap on sale if you go to 12rules.io to grab a copy, but it's not going to be on sale for much longer. This is chock full of wisdom in how to get from junior developer to senior developer. It's loaded with actionable advice to accelerate your career. It's a lot of tips and stuff. Instead of focusing on coding, I think you can figure out the coding stuff. We've all taken classes and courses and learn how to code and how to do things. But there's more to being a pro coder than just that. There's more than just algorithms and implementations. There's concepts of involving security, continuous integration, team communication and interaction. What's some good ideas for meetings, and what are some not so good ideas when it comes to meetings? There's just chock full of information. So go check out 12rules.io and grab a copy before the price goes up. And speaking of learning and training and stuff, I reached out to a good friend of mine who I've known for several years to come on as part of the Meet the Pro Coder segment. This is somebody so committed to the cause. I saw him once at a Spring One conference, decked out in a Star Trek original shirt, headed on his way to give a talk on the Spock testing framework. And I want to welcome Ken Cousin.
You've got applause in there and everything, huh? Wow. This is a pro. I mean, this is a professional operation here. I'm very impressed.
Well, I'm glad you came on the show today. I wanted to, you know, now I know you because I've seen your talks. I chuckle. This is a Ken Cousin, the president, CEO, owner, conglomerate, international conglomerate of Ken Cousin IT. But I remember it because he gets chided for being called Cousin It.
Well, that was my wife's idea, actually. She thought people would spell my name correctly if it was Cousin IT or Cousin It, and they don't, so either way. But it was her idea, so I have to give her that. So, one comment, by the way, real quick about that whole idea of commit messages. I use the AI assistant inside of IntelliJ IDEA, which is now a subscription service, like, everything else in
Yeah.
AI, you got to pay for it. What I use it for most is generating commit messages for me. Now, if you want to put a reference to an issue, you have to edit the message before you upload it, but it automatically generates a one-line summary and then skips a space and then puts in a whole summary of all the classes that were changed, a lot of interesting details in there, the kind of stuff I would never take the time to do. Well, rarely take the time to do. It generates that for me, and then I could edit it. And now my commit messages in my repositories are a lot better than they used to be.
I didn't know that. This is the stuff where I think we're learning what is AI going to do or not do. And I think there's
Yeah.
sweeping stuff of AI is the death knell. AI is going to take everybody's job versus AI is not going to do nothing. And it's like I think it's somewhere in the middle of
Right.
little stuff where it's like, hey, I would not have done that, but this introduces an efficiency for me with this tool.
Well, as people say, it's the cliche is that, a developer who knows their tools and the AI, tools are their tools, will be better off than a developer who doesn't know their tools. So you'll be better
Mhm.
able to compete and to function productively if you know what your tools can do for you, if they can automate part of the process. But of course, you still have to understand what it's suggesting and what it's doing, because you can't just say, oh yeah, just push this to main or whatever. You have to actually edit it. But it is nice that it'll put in the structure of it for you very quickly.
That's real sweet. Now, maybe you need to catch us up on what's kind of your origin of
Oh,
computer science, or what is Ken's history of uh, being a pro coder?
well, my like so many people in IT, I was a career changer, like many people were. And my area was aerospace engineering. Actually, I was a research scientist for many years. I used to my programming language at the time was, ouch, Fortran.
Oh,
I mean, it was, I used to think my middle name was off by one error and things like that. I mean, it was fine, but I didn't really know coding. I knew the math and I knew the topic that I used to work on, like acoustics of jet engines and things like that. And so all my job at the time was math and programming, but the programming was, Fortran. That's where all the numerical libraries were. So of course that's where we worked. When Fortran 90 came out back in the 90s, I was one of the few people in my group who was like, "Oh, hey, this is really cool. It has this thing called encapsulation and stuff." And I'd never heard of that before. I thought this is neat. And most of the engineers around me were like, "Why would you care about that at all?" And then I knew again I was in the wrong area. So that's when I decided to go to school at night to get a master's in CS. My company at the time was one of those Fortune 500 companies. They would pay for you to go at night, and that's how it took me about a little over 2 years to get the degree there, going like a couple of courses a semester, but all at night. And then I went out and was either going to become a full-time coder. I was either going to join a company as a developer, or I had the opportunity to teach some software development training classes. And that's what I really wanted, because originally I was always going to be a professor anyway. And then I saw what the life of a professor was really like and went, yeah, I don't want to do that. I hated the whole idea of begging for funding, begging for money all the time. It was so bad. I really didn't like that. And there weren't a lot of opportunities anyway in academia at the time. But the idea of teaching training classes, that was much more appealing, because then, I mean, you don't have to convince people of why to learn something. They're only there because they want to learn something. They have a job to do. Your job, instead of trying to teach them a body of material, is to find out what they need to know to do their job and adapt the material to suit that. And in other words, I'm not grading them, they're grading me.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, that
yeah,
makes perfect sense.
so I joined a small 12-person company. I'd left a Fortune 500 company and joined this little 12-person consulting group as a trainer. And I used to teach intro Java courses because I jumped from Fortran to Java. That was fun.
That's a mega leap because I had to take Fortran as one of the introductory computer science classes in my day. They still held on to it. I think they ditched it shortly after I left, but
Well, the Java stuff I didn't learn in a course. I picked up Bruce Eccles' Thinking in Java book. You probably remember that.
yeah,
Uh,
I think Josh has mentioned that as one of his favorite books of all time. If for learning Java, that is.
it really helped me with the OO transition. And then I also looked at that. Those are the early years of Sun's Java certification. And that's when I joined like the website Java Ranch, and they had sample tests and stuff. And I've always collected credentials my whole life. That's I was always a good test taker. I was always good at what I called the game of school, figuring out what the teacher wanted so I could supply it. And certification was a way for me to study the parts of the language that I would not otherwise have encountered, and to understand the quote right way to do things, the way that the people who created the language wanted you to do them. And the certification itself wasn't necessarily going to help my resume a lot, although probably would at the time, because I didn't have thousands, tens of thousands of lines of code I could point to that I'd written. So that was a help. And the studying for it and the getting the certification, and at the time this was right before the e-commerce boom, that really helped me get a job, and I've been a trainer ever since. I spent like 5 years at that training company building up my areas, the things I could teach and understand, and then went out on my own, and I've been an independent for the last, I guess March will be 19 years. My goodness, it's going to be a while.
Don't stop and do the math because then sometimes you're like, yikes, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
So
I
you
had
actually
hair
went
back then, it was very
uh,
different.
we'll have to ship. We're gonna have to ship you it was a little bit too late to get them shipped on time. We're gonna have to ship you a hat for the for the Pro Coder show.
Oh, it's never too late for a cool hat. That'd be sweet. Thank you.
So you in a sense, you're like I have this hesitation on certifications and stuff because I think of
Mm.
people gamify it, but you actually used it as a genuine structure for, well, okay, this can help me learn content maybe I wouldn't have learned, or you can learn some of the corner cases and be able to leverage them, and then you're able to, you then turned around and instead of just being a consumer, you're a producer because you're sitting there sharing your content with other people through different formats, and um to be able to help train people on stuff. And now, by the way, if y'all didn't know it, the Ken now has gotten into YouTube and has been generating content left and right. I knew that was a natural extension for you.
Well, I had done a lot of things in my career. I mean, as I say, it's been like 20 years, or well, more in the IT area, but 20 years on my own almost. And about 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to try a newsletter. I was already following a couple people online on their newsletters. And I started off, I went to my wife and said, I'm thinking of writing a weekly newsletter. She went, okay. And I said, but what am I going to do if I hit some week where I don't have anything to say? And I think she's still laughing actually at that. So, any rate, I created a newsletter called Tales from the Jar Side. And the whole idea there. And I started on Tiny Letter. I was there about a year, and many of the newsletters that I was following at the time moved to Substack. So I decided to move to Substack, and it's my newsletter, Tales from the Jar Side, has been appearing every Sunday ever since that. So I just finished the end of December was 5 years on that, or I'm in year 5 now of coming out every Sunday. And it's free. It's at kencousin.substack.com. But then what I realized for many reasons is that not everybody reads these things. Everybody says they want text rather than video, but some people want video too. Some people would much rather see things done than have text. And my son was one of those people. I couldn't get my son to read the newsletter. I couldn't get my wife to read the newsletter. All these things that the people like, yeah, whatever. So a year ago, I decided to start a YouTube channel also called Tales from the Jar Side. And as you say, it's actually you went to the Substack. Yeah, that works too. But it's on youtube.com/@Tales from the Jar Side. That's the YouTube link. I can put that in the chat if you like.
I put a copy of both links on there so people can catch either on YouTube or your Substack.
Oh, aren't you nice? Thank you, sir. So at any rate, I started doing that, and the idea was the basic pitch was, you don't feel like reading my newsletter? That's fine. I'll be happy to read it to you, with background information and demos and director's cut type stuff in there as well. But then I started with that, and I still do the regular newsletter video every Monday, but I try every other week basically to put in a technical video as well, something Java related or Groovy or Kotlin or Gradle or Spring. Those are the areas where testing things with JUnit and stuff. I have a whole series of videos out there for that. And that's what I've been trying to maintain ever since. So that one's been a little over a year now, and it's growing slowly, but I'm having fun with it.
And that's the big deal. Is I've met with several people, software developers, advocates, trainers, what have you, and the people that really get in it and get going at it, in my opinion, it's not the go generate 5 videos a week and 10 clips for Instagram and live stream twice a week. It's not the people that do that. It's the people that are like, I'm having fun with it. There's this message I want to share, and it's like that's what makes it, to me, sustainable. Is if you're not having fun, then you're gonna burn out in no time flat. I think I was chatting
the other thing. I'm sorry. The other thing it does.
Go ahead.
The other thing it does is it forces me to complete things. Like, it gives me a reason to learn a new topic or expand on some topic, even when I don't have a project that's directly related. Like learning about, you find out about functional interfaces in Java, of course, and then you look at JUnit, and JUnit has its executor interface, and the whole idea is that it's a runnable that throws throwable. And you're like, oh, okay, that's different. And then I went, well, what other functional interfaces are in JUnit? And it turns out there's a throwing supplier, a supplier that throws throwable, and a throwing consumer, something like that. And I thought, well, people should know about this. I mean, the JUnit team knows about it, but it's not a huge part of their documentation. It's just like, hey, look, this is why they did this, and this is how it helps. So I made a video about it, and I had to do that. Another one, like my most recent video came out yesterday. A lot of people are working with these AI tools, and people use ChatGPT or what have you. But you may be aware that there are certain projects like Olama. Have you heard of the Olama project?
That one I haven't heard about.
Capital O and then llama, like the animal. Olama, it's short. I think it's short for Open Llama. The idea is that this allows you to run large language models on your local machine.
Wow.
So you install Llama, and it gives you a command line interface to download open source object model, or large language models.
Wow.
Run them locally, but it also installs a server on your machine so that it's broadcasting on like localhost port 11434, something like that. And you can therefore access the large language model programmatically as though it was a RESTful web service. So Spring AI ties into it. The LangChain for J, which I really like, ties into it. So yes, and of course, one of the neat things you could do, and this was the hook for the video, is you could install not just any large language model like Llama or many of the others, Mixtral, etc. They have some, quote, uncensored ones as well, ones with guardrails taken off. And if you don't want to send that information to a cloud provider, to some AI provider, and you certainly don't want to be charged for it, you could run it locally, local uncensored model, and ask it uncomfortable questions that you wouldn't necessarily want the NSA to know you're asking about.
Put that on your checklist. I didn't see that coming 20 years ago. It's like,
Oh yeah. So now, of
uh,
course, you're limited. We say they're free because it's all open source models, but
right.
the free part really is limited by the fact you're running on your own hardware. So you have invested in your hardware, but that also limits the size and power of the models you can run. Like I run, many of them are like 7 billion parameter models, which is a few gigs, which is not bad, believe it or not. But then there's 13 billion parameter models, and then the big ones have like 30 or 40 billion parameters. And I tried running one of those big ones once, and I had to kill it. It was just bringing my machine to its knees. You could hear it whimpering. It was just no way. I had to stop that and wait for it to reclaim the memory. But if you're willing to use some of the smaller models that aren't necessarily as accurate, but will still, save you some time and effort, like you could ask it to write you a cover letter for a Java programming job in pirate speak, and it'll do it. Those are no problem at all.
That's impressive. You and Craig Walls need to team up, do a live stream or something,
Oh,
because he's going to know 10 times to what I know on this topic. So, because
he and I have been talking a lot about Spring AI because Spring AI is progressing rapidly, but at a much slower pace than either of us expected. We both thought it was going to be version 1 at the end of December last year, and I was scheduled to teach a training class on Spring AI in January, only to find that it was version 0.8 snapshot. I mean, it's very early. But still, so I talked to him and we interacted a lot, and I borrowed a couple of his examples and gave him some of mine, and managed to do fine in the course. But boy, it's going to be different in a couple months when they finally do release the product.
I'm part of the stuff I just kind of track from the side is like just the news stuff where people are doing all these little hacks or something. They're like trying to find the limits of Chat GPT. So like Chat GPT, if I needed a script to upload to Alter U, give it to me, and chat, okay, here's the code to issue. And so they, at one point, I think they had to turn off like server side scripts or something because people were using Chat GPT to figure out how to hack the system and like get coached along the way. And it's like, this is the kind of stuff that was it called DEF CON conference? Uh,
Well,
oh,
but what it's good for again is all the parts that you don't use a lot. Like
yep,
like most people with Git, as you were talking about Git in your introduction, I know the parts of Git that I use every day. But if I
mhm,
have to do something unusual or something I haven't done in a while, or if I have to say, oh shoot, I committed to the wrong branch, how do I remove that and put it on the right branch? That's what the AI tools are for, because that's a
exactly.
sufficiently routine operation that it'll know, but not so routine that I remember it. Oh, by the way, I've got 2 Chat GPT jokes for you.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so here's one. Chat GPT walks into a bar. Bartender says, "What do you have?" ChatGPT says, "What's everybody else having?" Wait, I need my rim shot here. There you go. Yeah, so I like that one. The other one was basically I say to ChatGPT, "What's 9 plus 7?" And it says 0. You go, "No, it's 16." Sorry. Yes, I understand. Now it's 16. Okay, good. Now, what's 10 plus 20? 16. There you go.
We'll put it up here. Ken post it on here so you can find it where Olama is. I don't know if they were ripping off OCaml with that.
Oh,
But
I have no idea what that they do have a Discord server you could probably ask, but I just went to there. There's also a similar product, by the way, called LM Studio, I think, that you can go to. lmstudio.ai also is another one which will download and manage these models locally on your own machine. But I've used Olama. That's the one that I like, and it's simple, it's easy. Oh yeah, I like that gag. So somebody else laughed at that. Good. Very good.
yes,
Those
yeah,
are not
Don.
mine, by the way. Feel free to reuse them.
Hat tip. Don is one of our fabulous members. Oops, wait a minute.
And I
I'm
saw
pushing the
Simon was here
limits.
too, and he's awesome.
I'm pushing the limits here on StreamYard. So Don's one of our members. We do have a membership if you want to become a member of the Pro Coder group. So all the articles that I write, which I'm actually preparing to write an article, a reaction to, what you can join at member.procoder.io for less than the cost of latte, especially the price of lattes have gone up. So it's even cheaper than a latte to be a member. But somebody had pointed out that, hey, I don't go to Stack Overflow anymore. It's a dinosaur. I go to Chat GPT to get my answers. Now you have to be able to, filter that or process that. But it has a point that the context, being able to, it's like, and I was charmed at the reasons why I can get the answer and nobody calls me stupid.
Right.
It's that's kind of a mass simplification of some of the culture that's precipitated Stack Overflow. I like to say, as a pro coder, I have never talked to somebody with that tone, but I understand that is something you can run into, and I don't want that.
Well, I think it's
Something
just that
that's
people don't want to sometimes admit their ignorance at all. So it's also more, it feels more private that way. And also you
Mhm.
have to verify the answers that come out of Stack Overflow too, although it's likely
Yep.
somebody else will go, yes, that's right, or yeah, or no, that's wrong. There'll be other feedback on there too. So it's people with a high rating on Stack Overflow. I like to watch their answers a lot. I tend to focus on the people as much. Oh, and yes, as Donald said, the people who read Tales from the Jar Side, who subscribe to the newsletter, maybe the video channel also, are affectionately known as jarheads. Yes,
Yep.
and they
Yes.
are, at least until I get a real Marine saying, "Don't do that anymore," at which point I will back off so fast, you have no idea. Yeah, but they are more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than your regular newsletter reader or listeners or viewers. So.
That's right. But one of the challenges in that was I appreciated the tweet thread the person had written, and somebody else is like, but here's the issue. Chat GPT is what I've heard somebody describe as a synthesizer. It's ingesting data and being able to kind of synthesize and summarize for you what happens when everybody leaves Stack Overflow and no new content's being generated. What then? What happens then? And so, that that is a very valid question. What's the future for tech content in this sense? And this is part of the reason why I've pivoted from Spring Boot. Is, well, one's obvious, is I'm not on the Spring team anymore, but the other is I want something that's a little more universal, a little more evergreen. And so let me at least try to put something out here where I'm clearly not Chat GPT.
Well,
But
they say that's happening across the industry because these AI
mhm.
tools are producing so much dreck that is being used on web pages everywhere, and then the next generation of AI tools, in principle, will be trained on that garbage. And then that's what they call poisoning the well. Now, will it actually happen that way? Will it be, terrible, as Simon pointed out, garbage in, garbage out, of course. But we don't really know how all that's going to play out
No,
long
we don't.
term. I mean, you have to filter these things now. You have to always put in your test cases. In fact, that it fosters a best practice of putting in test cases to make sure that things work the way they say, or bouncing it out, talking with other members of your community and making contacts with experts, and doing additional research. In other words, it's nice for automating the things that everybody does all the
Yeah.
time, but you still have to do the work, and they can be great if you already know what you were going to do, you just didn't know the details.
And some of the philosophy I tried to get into my book. Part
Mm.
of the book has content that I'd written as one particular recipe in another book, and I harvested that and kind of upgraded it. But it's like you've still got to do all this stuff. We've gotten away for years without automated testing. It used to be we had reams of printed test procedures and a whole test team to execute stuff. Well, we got so far with that, but we realized, if you're gonna release software used by millions, if it's going to be released around the world, if we're going to have a 24/7 ecosystem, we need automated testing. We have to. And now with these tools coming in, it's you've got to have it. There's a particular I don't want to say influencer, is a woman that she does she writes code, but she also makes these funny short videos I've seen posted on X/Twitter. And it's this somebody comes to her in this little story and says, we need this solution to fix the spreadsheets. And so she goes to Chat GPT and gets a Python script, and she runs it. Looks good. Hands it back to the person, and the gets this praise coming back of, wow, ninja coding skills. And then 10 minutes later, it wrecked the data. And then the girl's like, it's like, didn't test your script adequately. So,
Well, I mean, there's a couple.
oh,
I mean, I always feel like with testing, if you don't test, how do you know you're right? How do you ever know you're right?
exactly.
Whereas again, a lot of these tests can be generated pretty easily, and you could look at them. My experience is the better the coder. Now this is anecdotal. This is people that I've met. The better the coder, the more tests they have, the more they like tests and have good ones and understand all of that. So that's very valuable to me. Now, the other thing I'll say is I'm not good at doing strict TDD, test driven development. That interrupts my flow too much. But I definitely follow what I call GDD, which is guilt driven development. If I have code in that I haven't tested, I feel guilty about it and have to go in and add tests for that.
It's funny. And I remember first reading about TDD years ago, and I thought, oh, this is the future. But as I got more experienced
Yeah.
and on in the Spring portfolio, everything has automated testing, but it's not all done through like as you said, a strict TDD fashion. I agree. There's in some situations it's useful, in other situations it is disruptive. Sometimes you need to fiddle with the code a little bit to play with it to be like, okay, I don't like these handles. Let me tweak it. Okay, these handles are a little better. Okay, let me find the hand. Okay, now I think I like how this feels. Now let's start using that to inform our test cases. Let's capture that stuff. And so I mean that's absolutely, to me, the point is to get the test there eventually. It doesn't have to be first for it to work. Uh,
Oh, so
Now the
that
other thing
must have
is,
been the comment by you saw the comment by Donald. I'm sorry, do you
yeah,
want
I'm
to
going
read
to
it?
read it out here because some of the people may be
Yeah.
catching this on audio only on the podcast. But Don posted, I asked the GitHub Copilot a Spring Boot 3.2 question and got a response I didn't think was correct. So I asked, what is the current Spring Boot version? And the response was Spring 2.6. It's like that's so off. It's what is it? It's not even wrong.
Well,
But
it's not
you need
surprising either. Now, they do
right.
update if you pay your money to OpenAI, then GPT-4 Turbo, the latest one, and by the way, that's one of the changes they've made now. The name GPT-4 Turbo Preview always points to the latest and greatest, their latest one available. That the training window has moved all the way up to April of last year. So April of 2023. But in GPT 3.5, it ended in like 2019, 2020, somewhere there. So they don't even know Java 17 really. I ask it, I say, here's some JSON data, JavaScript object notation. Give me records that map to that. And a lot of times it'll say, well, here are the records, but be aware that's still a preview feature. And you're like, no, 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 no. So again, you have to go back in there. Oh, I
And
like your
I just need to
comment.
put it up there as a disclaimer. This show is in no way sponsored by OpenAI. So I just want to put the disclaimers
Yeah,
out
but
there.
I totally believe my test often when I'm running a new AI model I've never used, like through Llama or something like that, is I say, who are the last 3 Super Bowl winners? And boy, I've gotten some funny answers out of that. Atlanta has won so many Super Bowls.
You know, we've all probably heard of the Turing test. That maybe have to be the cousin test. It's like,
Oh
so
God.
what's your all right, everybody, put that out on your social media. You heard it here first.
I will totally deny any responsibility for that. But yeah, I mean, just to find out, I mean, what you could do, for example, with Olama, I've tried like there's one called Tiny Llama, which is only a couple of gigs in size. It's really small. It's only got like a meg or two, no, about a billion nodes inside it. And I said to it something like, what year is 10 years from now? And it gave me like, I don't know, 2340 or something like that. What was 10 years ago? 2023. I mean, it was totally confused by simple questions like that. But
Well,
again, if it's a chance for you to experiment and learn what these things do well and what they do badly. I'm not at all surprised, however, that when you ask it coding questions, it will give you old style answers that can
yep.
be out of date pretty quickly. I'll only say that GPT-4 does better than any of the others I've used on that.
I think I keenly remember Don's down in the Atlanta area, so he really brought up a sad moment there with all those Atlanta Super Bowls there. I think.
Well, I'm a Patriots fan, and we're paying for that now, but it was good for 20 years. I can't complain.
What is it? Simon's what does it happen? This is a happening episode of the Pro Coder Show. So, by the way, smash like if you're getting value out of this. Simon says, well, there was an AI system that kind of passed the test because the testers thought the answers were too bad to have been provided by an AI system. Now, that's an interesting new challenge.
Oh boy. Oh
This is
my
something
goodness.
they need. Somebody's got to bake. Somebody out there needs to write a screenplay for a parody movie of Deus Ex Machina. But that's I don't know, sci-fi horror movie that came out. They need to make a humorous one.
I'm trying to figure out the lead in that movie, not the lead, the billionaire in that movie.
Yeah,
Is that supposed to be Elon or Zuck? I can't figure out which. Kind of a blend, I guess.
probably inspired by both, but
I mean, clearly, in Glass Onion, that was Elon.
I didn't see
Yeah.
that one. But
Oh,
all I
you
know
have
is
to. You saw Knives Out, right?
if I go to this is spoiler alert for anybody that's not seen Deus Ex Machina. If I go to a place and the doors are locking at night, the next day I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. Just cut to the chase.
That's that question. Says, I'm now learning Spring Boot. So, what's your suggestion on which topic I have to focus? Spring Boot is kind of all of a piece, and there are several really good books that will introduce you to the whole topic. Frankly, you've got one, Greg, right?
Yeah, I put one out, so it's a little over a year old. My latest book is Learning Spring Boot 3.0 third edition, so you can find that at all the major sellers out there if you want to get ramped up on it. What some of the viewers
Mark,
might not be aware of if they're catching on is this channel has pivoted a bit away, so there's a lot of legacy content on Spring Boot. So I'm not going to be making more Spring Boot specific videos, but another place to go check out is if you want to go check out Dan Vega's channel.
yeah.
He has been cranking out the content full time over there, and I think he's at like 45,000 subs. So that's a
Yeah, and
solid channel to go catch the latest.
I'm sorry, the name of his channel is just Dan Vega, so it's really easy to find.
Yep,
Mark Heckler, I think you had recently here. He also has a good introductory Spring Boot book
that's
as
right.
well.
On Dan's channel, I'll post a link here so we will make it easier for people to find. This is
Do you think Dan will give us a commission? I mean, after all.
yeah, he'll give us 20% of zero. So it's
Uh,
seen
but-
some of the I follow some of the like math and physics channels and stuff like 3 Blue 1 Brown.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
he had fun posting like some of the content. He would throw some of these fancy problems at Chat GPT and it would fail spectacularly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, what it's good at is the stuff that everybody else has done. If a million people have done it, it'll learn that. And that's why what you focus on with those AI tools is, what do I don't happen to remember or I never learned how to do, but it's routine. Everybody does this. So you just, how do I write a script to do something which, I haven't written a script in a long time. I don't remember the details. I had it like one of the things you can do, again, I'm going back to OpenAI, sorry about that. It's that they have a great text to speech mechanism, and they also have a transcription service. You could upload an MP3 file and have it write out the transcription for you. Well, the problem is they have a limit of like 25 megs on the size of the uploaded audio file. And that's not much. That's not a
No,
lot
it's
of
not.
audio. No. So what you need to do is you need to split your existing audio file into segments that are each less than 25 megs in size. And then the process is you upload one after another, each time taking the transcript for the previous one and supplying that as information for the next one. So it knows these are all connected. Well, I didn't know how to split MP3 files. And so I asked AI tools and it went, oh, javax.sound has these mechanisms to let you split it productively so they're still playable and everything. I'm like, I had no idea. I've been using Java for 25 years. I never used anything in the javax.sound package. And now I have something that I probably would not have. Let's put it this way: without the AI assistance, I probably wouldn't have done the project. It was just an interesting thing for me to learn, and that lowered the bar to understanding enough that I was able to take their answers and then figure out how to do it for real for my system, and it worked. It just made life much, much easier for me.
So instead of, the world where it was 25 years ago, where there's this big, massive on ramp you have to get on, there's this one
Mm.
path to becoming a pro coder, a 4-year comp sci degree. There's now a lot more tinier paths on, whether it's, we're talking about boot camp programs, what have you, or studying YouTube content. But now you have like these AI tools that can help you bridge the gap with little stuff. It doesn't do it all for you. It can just help you, like training wheels, get moving. Yeah, Don has got a keen question. Does Java X also do translation?
What do you mean by Java X there? I
I
mean,
don't know if that's supposed to be a joke, but
that's the beginning of a package name, but I'm not sure. I don't think it was a
yeah,
gag. I think might have been a
yeah.
typo. I don't know of any other tools that do that. By the way, the one tool, if you really are interested in transcriptions, if you're interested in uploading audio or video and asking for a transcript, there's a tool called Open Whisper, the Whisper API. It on a Mac, there's actually in the Mac store, it's called Whisper Translations, but there's an open one too. I think it's called Open Whisper, and it's a front end on that, and it does all kinds of different files, and it generates everything, and you don't have to pay for it if you use the small model. But if you want to use their more sophisticated models, it's a one-time fee of like $20. It's nothing. In fact, I bought it mostly because I wanted to reward the developer because it was such a useful tool for me. I'll go look it up while you're thinking
Yeah,
about
I
it.
think for Don to clarify what Ken's talking about when JavaX.sound is that's basically saying there is a component inside the JDK you can use to do audio file manipulation. It lets you open probably, I guess, a WAV file. You can chop it, break it up into part, and programmatically do it. It's just nobody knows about this. This is one of the corner cases. It's like Ken's probably one of 5 people in the world that now know about JavaX.sound package inside the JDK.
But the one he was first of all, the tool I was thinking about was called Mac Whisper, so it's exclusive to the Mac. So that may not be useful for some of the people here. When Don followed up with the audio processing software, does it do transcripts in multiple languages? The answer is that the translations are only into English. So that's a problem, but the transcriptions are in about, I don't know, 20 or 30 different languages. Yes, you could pick a wide variety of languages around the world. Now, how good those translations are is another issue. I actually experienced that. There was another AI tool. Have you heard of this one called HeyGen, HeyGen?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
HeyGen, by the way, they just tied into the Adobe tools, in case you're curious.
Oh
They
boy.
are one of those tools that has priced themselves too high so that I don't use it, but I used it for a couple of like shorts. And what they do is not only do they translate your text into other languages, they modify your appearance so it looks like you're actually speaking the other language. So I took one of my
Wow.
shorts. Oh, really, it's amazing. It really works. I took one of my YouTube shorts that was in English, of course, and I had it translated to Hindi, and it processed it, and it came up with the Hindi version. But of course, I had no idea whether it was any good or not. So I shared it with a couple of my Indian friends, and when they stopped laughing, they said, "Okay, it's not terrible, it's not bad, but, it's just let me put it this way, I did a Hindi one with some of my Indian friends. I did a Polish one with some friends that I knew in Poland, and I think I did a Dutch one as well. Universally, the people who were remote all said, "Look, thanks for thinking about us and everything, but we're used to dealing with English speakers rather than bad Polish or bad Hindi." You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not that it was terrible. They could read it, they could follow it, and it was kind of amusing. I intend to play the Hindi one the next time I go to India, but it's not really worth it. Certainly wasn't worth what HeyGen was charging for the service.
Yeah, the stuff I've seen is, I think you did a video or something. You went and gave a review of sorts to Descript. That's kind of an interesting suite of tools I've seen, the Descript.com, whatever, and that
Yeah,
some of their stuff, you can do the transcriptions. You can sit there and then go to the transcription, make alterations, and it can then generate the audio using your trained voice to make it sound like you're saying that. So you can edit and amend stuff. It's probably not, I don't know how good it is if you're trying to have it generate an entire, 30-minute piece, but to that kind of editability of audio and video is very captivating, and it looks like it's got the right price.
Well, that Mac Whisper tool, by the way, the one that was generating the transcripts, I do that for all my videos, but it's a learning network so that when I've corrected a word several times, like a couple different videos in a row, it figures it out, and it actually uses the right one. Also, you can do a global search and replace and have it store that. Like, it could not figure out how to spell mosquito, as you might imagine. I mean, like, it's not a real word. And I had to put in like 6 different spellings to go, no, if you think it's this, it's actually Makito, or if you think it's this, it's actually Makito. And it even surprised me with a new one a couple of weeks ago. But it does seem to learn more or less over time, and that is really helpful. And I know a lot of people who watch videos want to see a transcript.
That is cool. The I'm going to be hitting the top of the hour here. I do want to thank everybody for coming to check out the Pro Coder Show. We can be sure to catch us on, we stream this live to all kinds of platforms, but if you want to catch it after the fact, you can either go to youtube.com or go to podcast.procoder.io and catch it there. And I also want to thank Ken for coming on the second episode of season 2 for the Pro Coder Show. And we'll see y'all next time.
Oh, my pleasure.
This episode is over, but your code writing journey continues. Visit procoder.io to find links and resources to help you become a pro coder.